Corum Group is a mergers and acquisitions company based here in actually Seattle. And what we're going to go through today is how to best sell your company, how to prepare your company for sale, what to do, what not to do, what are the necessary steps, and what are the deal disasters that really can mess up a deal. My background is in video games. I've been in the video game business for 22 years. I actually started out publishing games on CompuServe, some of which you may have heard of, Duke Nukem, Doom, some of the early Quake stuff. Thanks, man. And so we had a lot of experience in publishing product online, funny enough, way back then, and history seems to be repeating itself. We also were responsible for getting the Unreal guys off the ground, Tim and Mark and the team there. So we've had a lot of experience in the video game industry, and I've actually sold 2 of my video game companies to larger companies, both public companies, so I have some experience in some of the things that you may go through in the future when you sell your company. Let me give you a little bit of background on Corum. We only represent privately held companies on the sell side. We only work in software and related tech companies. So we have a buyer's database of over 120,000 companies, but we only represent companies like yourselves that are selling to larger companies. And we only do software. We don't do hardware. We don't do anything else but software. And I specialize on the video game side. As I mentioned, we're based here in Seattle, but we have offices throughout the world, throughout Europe and Asia, to represent companies overseas. In fact, 60% of the deals are cross-border, so you're dealing a lot with companies that are selling into the US or selling into Europe or selling into Asia. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through what we believe is the optimal outcome process. It's a team approach. We have multiple people working with you. You should have a team working with you to sell your company. We are also the largest tech M&A educator in the world, and we have the largest database of buyers out there. So we know what guys are buying, what their habits are, how much cash they have, and so on, what they do for due diligence, etc. We've sold more privately held software companies than anyone in the world. We're also a recognized leader. This is our president, Nat Burgess. He is here on CNBC, and he actually predicted earlier this year that Microsoft would get involved with Barnes & Noble. And a lot of the people out there, a lot of the press said, no way, this is absurd. Well, it happened. They put $300 million into Barnes & Noble. So there is a recognized leadership there. Here are some of our recent transactions. We do business all over the world. We do business in different software categories. We have, as I said, most of these deals are cross-border, about 60% of them. We see some big buyers coming out of Japan and Korea especially. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick overview of the market. Next session is actually, I'm going to be working with Alina, our senior analyst from Corum, and we're going to go through the video game market in more detail. But I'm going to give you a quick overview of the market. And then we're going to do a bit on M&A valuations and how people are valuing their companies these days. And then go through the process a little more in terms of the optimal outcome. What are the 8 essential steps that you need to take to prepare your company for sale at the maximum price and the maximum outcome? You want to avoid the deal disasters, and we've seen them all. I've seen them personally with my companies when you almost think you're not going to sell the company and you can get out of it, but you just want to avoid those deal disasters from the beginning. And improve your odds. I'm going to show you how to improve your odds, and then we'll close up. So let me give you a market perspective. Everything in this market is disruptive. All of the key elements driving M&A are disruptive, and that's why it makes the M&A market so great today, especially for video game companies. We're disrupting all the platforms, all the content, everything, how people get paid, how pay for content, and so on. The first, what we did is we looked at a Gartner Group study that were the top 10 strategic technologies, and this really does apply to video games in a big way. Obviously, media tablets and beyond, driving our industry. It's phenomenal. There's just so many new platforms, especially in the tablets, that are providing vehicles to sell more content. Mobile-centric apps. And this is Gartner projecting that entire tech industry, but it's so applicable to the video game industry. Mobile-centric apps, 70 billion plus mobile app store downloads by 2014. That's phenomenal. The next, social and contextual experience. We're probably one of the first to experience this in terms of video games. App stores and marketplace obviously changed the whole marketplace, especially with the Apple iPhone. The internet is everything. Believe it or not, and I think you know this, but camera sensors and facial recognition and object recognition are now part of our entire environment. And there's a lot of software driving those devices. Next generation analytics. Mobile devices, they're all performing analytics themselves. There's no need for off-site things. Those mobile devices are driving the analytics, and that has a big application in video gaming and the games that you make for mobile devices. Big data. We know about this. We drive a lot of data, tons of data. In-memory computing, well, most devices now, even if they're small devices and remote in the desert, wherever they are, sensors, whatever they are, they have persistent flash memory. Then there's a new layer of that memory hierarchy that are driving those devices. Low energy servers, again, those devices in remote places that can drive themselves and be energy efficient. Very important. And cloud computing, we saw from Paul from Big Fish Games, how the drive to put those games on the cloud and play those games from any device, anywhere, anytime. Very important for them to remember where you are in that gaming experience and continue it when you're on the road or where you're at the office or wherever you are. Now, what's driving all this M&A? Well, there's a ton of cash out there. More cash than we've seen in the last 25 years, and especially in the last 5 years. And this goes for video game companies too. Zynga has tons of cash, and they're spending it. But this is also the case with Apple, Microsoft, Google. All of them are getting into, in some way, shape, or form, our space. And their cash is at record levels. What's interesting is that a lot of their cash is overseas. And until there's some sort of tax holiday, they're going to leave that cash there and buy companies overseas. So if you're international, like a Skype, you're going to be a target for being bought because they have their cash there. Let's talk about valuations for a minute. Software M&A activity this year is growing dramatically. We expect it to be about $250 billion. We expect about 3,800 transactions to take place in software M&A. Nice growth, and we expect that to continue. These are the top strategic acquirers. And this is industry-wide. And look where Zynga is, number 3. Look where Google is, number 1. Google's buying in our space in a big way. But the obvious ones are Zynga. And there are other ones, as we'll see in 2012. I think we're going to see more game companies entering that list. But you can see all the traditional ones. Facebook is obviously buying in our space as well. Okay, how much money really is out there? How much uncommitted funds are there at the strategic buyers? Any guesses? How many $1 billion is out there available to be spent on your company? No guesses? 100 billion? 200 billion? Well, the number is $250 billion is out there ready to spend on your company. They are buying, they have that cash ready to go to make acquisitions to make their shareholders happy. Now here are the top private equity acquirers in 2011. Many of them I don't think you'll recognize. There's some in there that are buying. These guys have even more cash. How much cash do you think they have? They have about $500 billion worth of cash ready to be spent on video game companies and other companies. But we're in a hot space, and this is a good sign, obviously a very good sign. All right, there's 10 top reasons why M&A is so strong and is going to remain strong in the marketplace. We've seen extraordinary change. We see these interrelated markets, these interrelated media that have driven that change. I mentioned the cash. They have a lot of cash in their pockets and they're buying, especially overseas. Keep that in mind if you're out of North America. Debt costs nothing, absolutely nothing. So even if they didn't have the cash, they'd be able to borrow this money at no cost. Private equity, as I mentioned, over $500 billion available. And there's new buyers. Look at the buyers coming out of India and China. Look at the investment in Epic from Tencent. Look at the investment from Gree in two of some of our largest companies here in the US. Buyers from overseas are buying into or investing in our companies in the video game business. Also, there's new non-tech buyers. So there's a lot of companies that are not what you can consider a traditional tech company. So I consider Bosch to be a shock absorber company, some sort of hardware manufacturing. Well, they're buying into technology and software at a big rate. Those guys are coming out of the woodwork and getting into spaces that we never thought they'd get into. Crowd-funded buyers. Well, Facebook and Zynga, Groupon, when they went public in a totally different way than what we've traditionally seen. They had funding flowing in before they went public. I mean, they had a good idea of how much they could raise because people were aware that they were going public. And for foreign investors, American companies are really cheap. They're really low in price, given mostly for our dollar, but we are less expensive than some of our other foreign competitors. And as I said, cash is international. The example that I use is Microsoft buying Skype for cash overseas. They had that cash overseas. And software at what we think of as the major hardware companies, software is becoming ultimately extremely important to them. That's what's driving their hardware sales, so they've got to focus on that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about an optimal outcome. So the inherent problem between buyers and sellers, and I presume most of you are sellers, the inherent problem is that you're at odds on almost everything. You're at odds on price, you're at odds on structure, liabilities, taxes, non-competes, all of that. And so you end up being pretty much diametrically opposed on everything. And the key is to have somebody there as in the middle helping you manage all of those conflicts. Get a professional that is involved in helping you pull all the information that you need from the buyer and giving that proper information to the seller, from the seller to the buyer to make sure you're getting the optimal price for your company and the optimal outcome. Today, the process is tougher, a lot tougher. It takes more time because of regulatory environment. There's more tasks than people realize. Buyers are busy. Buyers are really busy. Think about what Zynga has on their plate. For every buy that they make in a month, I bet they see 100 that they can't buy. So they're very, very, very busy. They have a lot on their plate, and you need to get their attention. It's tougher getting outside professionals involved. It's very tough to get those people to do the proper job for you in terms of due diligence and that, so you've got to get their time. And the due diligence required is much more complex. One of the biggest issues in selling your company is deal fatigue. You need to be able to work on your company while people are working for you to sell your company. If you're constantly working on your deal, on your company to sell, your company obviously is going to suffer as a result. All right, I'm going to throw another figure out for you. What percentage of self-managed M&A transactions fail? Go ahead. 90? You're close. It's actually, we're recording it at about 80. It's actually around 85 right now. things just fall apart if they're not managed by a third party. So what is the optimal outcome? Well, the first thing is you want to maximize your value. You want to get the right price for your company. The next is you want to have a structure that works for you, and the best structure is cash, no question. There may be other pieces as part of that, but the key is to pull cash. Now, when I sold my companies, it was stock deals with private or with public companies, and there was really no cash involved. Today, good thing for you guys, it's mostly cash deals. There may be an element of stock, there may be an element of incentive, but these are cash deals. You want to minimize your liability. You want to minimize your risk, obviously. And part of that is reducing your tax liabilities and holdbacks. You've got to be working with an accountant to make sure that you do a good job of preparing ahead of time what your tax liability is going to look like when you get sold and then under what conditions you're going to get sold. And then structuring your deal. What kind of employment agreements are there? What kind of non-competes there? The good news is that it used to be 3 or 4 years. You had to stick around, you had to work for the company, you had to do all the things that you may not be used to doing as being your own boss or the CEO of the company, but you're working for somebody for 3 or 4 years. Those times have reduced to maybe 2 years, maybe 18 months in a good situation. So that's heading in the right direction. Let's face it, by the time 18 months passes, you're probably looking to get out and do something else. You don't want to be stuck there for a long time. And then providing for the proper integration is critical. Once you've sold the company, make sure that you have laid out who's doing what. Are you moving to New York? Are you moving to Eastern Europe? Are you there for 5 years? How many of your employees are coming with you? Are you staying where you are? Do you have the freedom to create new apps, new product, and get their approval? All of that has to be decided ahead of time. It's very important. Okay, let's go into the 8 stages for optimal outcome. And I've covered a lot of this already, but I'm just going to go through these quickly and sort of give you an idea of what's involved from a detail standpoint. The most important, I think, here is preparation. You have to set tasks or a timeline on what you're doing. You have to prepare your financials. You want to pull together a marketing plan or pull together at least an executive summary that'll be good for the sellers, and get those presentation materials ready. Research. You got to prepare a buyer's list. It's very important that you're not dealing with just one buyer. You're dealing with multiple buyers. You want to be dealing with multiple buyers, and I'll get to this in a minute in terms of the bidding or auction process when you're selling your company. But in terms of research, preparing that buyer's list, knowing of the top, let's say 50 buyers or the top 40 buyers worldwide that you know are interested in your company. That's critical. They could be competitors. They could be partners right now with you, or whatever, but prepare that list ahead of time. You also want to take into consideration who the proper contact is. Once you have that list of buyers, who are the right people? And I'll get to this in a minute, but it's obviously the CEO or the highest possible contact you can get within that company. It's not the vice president of development. It's not the vice president of marketing. It's a decision maker that can say yes or no to the deal. Now, contact, really important. Contact is not let's contact one buyer 1 month, and then let's contact the next buyer on our list 2 months from now. You have to contact those buyers all at the same time. And when you do contact those buyers, you need to be ready with an executive summary. You want to tell them in 1 page or less what your company does and why they're valuable to the buyer, why you're valuable to that company that's going to buy you. You also, when you're talking to those 30, 50, 100 buyers, you want to log all communications. And that's really important when you're establishing that communication line and tracking who is interested in your company and who's not interested in your company, because you want to get to those interested buyers immediately and get rid of the other ones that are not interested in the company. Discovery, coordinating everything, conference calls, site visits. It's very important to develop a synergy, a flow when you're dealing with buyers. You're dealing with probably, when you narrow it down, you're probably dealing with still 20 buyers. You want to coordinate that communication, and you want to make sure that it's methodical so that you're getting the right information to the right buyers at the right time. And this will all lead to the bidding process. That's ultimately critical to have everybody at the table at the same time bidding on your company. It's like you're selling your house. You want as many buyers there on the front lawn as possible bidding on your house, bidding the price of your house up, not just one. All right, negotiation, probably the hardest part. We need to organize those final visits. We need to be dealing with how we're going to negotiate with those people, how we're going to be pitting them against other buyers on the chain. And ultimately, what you're going to be doing is picking the best buyer for your company and signing a letter of intent with them. Now, that letter of intent is very, very important. It can't be loosey-goosey. It's got to be laid out a detailed terms of how you're selling your company, from employment agreements and terms and all cash position and all of that. It's got to be laid out so that you know what that deal is, and there's nothing going to be negotiated after the fact, after you've already sold your company. There's nothing worse going to your boss after you've sold the company and say, okay, what's my employment agreement? That's tough. You don't want to do that. So get that letter of intent in place. Very powerful tool here is inform the other bidders that there's a no-shop period here. You've got 6 buyers at the table. You've got one you really like. You inform the other 5 buyers, hey, I'm off the table. We're in a no-shop position. Well, what does that do to the other buyers? They go, what? He's serious. He's selling his company. So in case things fall apart with that initial that buyer that you've chosen, you've got 5 other buyers that know you're serious. Very, very powerful. A no-shop clause in the letter of intent with the buyer that you want to go with. All right. Due diligence. This goes through basically all of your contracts, all of your financial statements, everything that you've got, your business model and methodologies on how you do things. And that buyer's going to go through that as quickly as they can, but they're going to be thorough. They're going to be looking at everything. So when you're preparing your company for sale, you should have a lot of that done, or at least a lot of that in the works, so that you're not caught and the due diligence drags on, because that will ultimately kill a deal if it's just taking too much time to get data from you to the buyer. Stage 7, closing. Here we're signing the contracts. Final reps and warranties, we're determining any holdbacks, we're arranging payment, all of that. That's the final closing. And then we do integration. Now, after you sell a company, and I've done it a couple of times, they wire you the money on a Monday morning, and all of a sudden you don't know what to do. Where do I go? What am I doing? I've got a bunch of money in my bank account, and you kind of lost, actually. It's an amazing kind of experience. It's nice to have the money there, but you've been to the car dealership, you've bought your fancy car, and then what do you do? Well, integration is really important. You should have this set up ahead of time. You should call the CEO of the company and talk about what you're going to do this week, what you're going to do next month, what you're going to do this year, what those goals of the company is. Get really integrated into the new company. It's quite rewarding because you're considered an expert. Remember, you're the entrepreneur in a group of people that haven't really started their own company before, haven't done what you've done to build that company. And it's very rewarding to sit in a boardroom and be able to relate your experiences in that boardroom of a public company or where whoever's bought you. So be prepared for that. All right, here's some stats. Here's some funny numbers, 20 to 300. What does that mean? That's the number of buyer candidates that are out there looking to buy your company. We could see that number go up to 300. Can you believe that? 300 companies that are interested in buying your company. And it's a wide range. It's not just one company. It's not just the guy that's publishing your software. It's not the company that's distributing your software. It's a whole range of companies out there that you want to be prepared to work with. 700 to 1,000 communications of various kinds. That's what it takes to sell your company properly. Emails, phone calls, follow-up, simultaneous activities that need to happen to prepare yourself to sell the company. 10 to 30 expressions of interest. That's probably the average. I'd say it was around 10 to 12 is what we see, at least in terms of people that are looking at buying your company. We get up towards of 30 companies that may express some interest, but some of those may drop off. They drop off in what we call a very serious buyer who we get an NDA with. This company is going to get all of your information, your financials. They're going to get access to employment agreements. They're going to look under the hood and really get a good feel for what is great about your company, what challenges you might have had. But we get an NDA with that company and go from there. About 3 to 8 qualified parties will step up to the table, and about 1 to 3 offers will come in. But the key is you've got those companies bidding against each other to buy your company. You've got 2, 3 guys that are serious about buying your company and have made offers. Very, very important. Okay, as far as an optimal outcome is concerned, the typical average for a single buyer. Well, 6 contacts to get the first discussion. It takes work to get the CEO or the Vice President of Corporate Development of Zynga or Big Fish or any other large company to get your attention, just to get a return phone call. Just to say, okay, I'll set up a meeting with them by teleconference. That takes a while. It takes even longer to really get to the point where you get negotiation going, about 29 communications. So there's a lot of phone calls going on, a lot of communication there to really get them to that stage. And remember, you could be doing this with 30 buyers. So it's very important to understand the workload there. And these are in man months, basically about 9 to 12 months required to complete the workload associated with putting together the deal from start to preparation to negotiation and due diligence and closing of the deal. And about 3 to 5 man years in terms of in-house and professional work involved to do the job right to prepare for the final close. Really, it's an intense job to do it right. So here's another question for you. What percentage of instances will there be other buyers willing to pay more than the first one that approaches you? Anybody know the answers? In other words, what is the probability of or buyers that are going to come to you that are going to have a better offer than the first? Who are they? About 75% chance that that's going to happen. It's very, very important. We'll give you a figure in a minute on how that from the first offer, how that price of your company goes up, and how much does it go up by, based on the fact that you have multiple bidders coming to the table. I've mentioned this before, but when you're dealing with M&A, when you're dealing with selling your company, you're dealing with the top executives. If you're doing reselling and licensing, you could be dealing with a division of the company. If you're doing an alliance, you could be dealing with some sort of manufacturing or financial vice president. But really, when you're selling your company, you're dealing with a CEO. Keep that in mind. If you're not talking to the CEO or somebody that has the CEO's ear every day, you're not talking to the right person. And you'll probably waste a lot of time trying to get to that person over time. In fact, if you're talking to the Vice President of Development, he may see and be telling you you're a very valuable company to buy, but he doesn't want to buy you because his job is in jeopardy because you may be doing the job better. So he may be preventing you from selling your company to that company, but you don't know it. So deal with the CEO, or somebody's got the CEO's ear. Okay, Getting into a professional process is really critical to doing a great job in terms of selling your company. The model is critical, the preparation process that I've gone through. The research, your strategic position will improve the price of your company. It will help you a lot in knowing what the buyers will buy, when they can buy, how much cash they have, and who's making the decisions within that company. Market feedback. In fact, when you're talking to buyers, you get a lot of feedback on your company, things that can help your company progress in a positive way, even if they're not buying you. They can give you feedback on how you're developing, tools you're using, and so on. So all of that can be a benefit to you. Relationships. Not everyone is a buyer, but you open many doors which may yield additional business. Definitely happened in my case both times, where I got new customers, new clients overseas as a result of my company being for sale. And then the exit. Critical. Very, very critical in terms of doing it right. Now we're going to get into deal disasters in a minute, but I'll let you know that I've got these slides. I can send you these slides if you leave me your business card up here after the presentation, or leave it at the table at the back. Tim's got some materials that you may be interested in. We have a list of the companies, or a sample list of the companies that we've worked with. We also have a World Tech M&A report, which includes gaming, and I can send that to you as well if you leave your business card there. I think Tim's got some in the back, but if you don't get one, just leave your card. Okay, avoiding deal disasters. Well, one of the biggest deal disasters that I've seen is in terms of workload. It takes a lot of work to sell your company. And there's a lot of materials that take professionals to help you do that, like business plans and executive summaries and research, that sort of thing. Also, all of these things in red, they require professionals. Audits require professionals. Tax analysis, all of that. So you need professionals involved. There's no getting around it. Here's some more things that require professionals. Outside opinions, agreements, employment agreements, non-competes. Have people involved that have been through the process before. You don't want to be dealing with somebody that hasn't done this before, especially in your industry. If they don't speak the language, they won't get through all of these documents quick enough for you to get the deal done. Other value deal destroyers, confidentiality. Not as big a deal as it used to be. There used to be companies out there that were looking for, they're looking to just steal your technology or get great ideas for video games. But it's still an issue. You want to make sure you're dealing with the right people within that company, because they do have integrity. The vice president of corporate development, the CEO, the CFO, they have integrity in most cases. So that's a good reason for dealing with the right people in the company as well. Theft of technology, be very, very careful of that. You really shouldn't be handing any technology over before you get bought. You can be doing demonstrations, they can be due diligence or anything, but don't be handing over any source code or anything like that before you've sold the company. Loss of staff, not as big an issue again as well, but you've got to have some non-solicitation in there. You have to make sure that these guys aren't going to poach your best programmers or artists and then run. The wear on the CEO and management. Key is to make sure that that doesn't take over the company. As few people as should know in the company should know about you selling the company. I said that kind of weird, but just keep it to a minimum. And there's going to be a bit of wear and tear, but that's why you have professionals involved. You can't have your CFO doing a million financial things plus trying to run the company. You want to have a tax person giving you an opinion. You want to have an audit done if it's necessary by a third party that can help take some of that load off. And again, business drop-off or lack of focus. Okay, 10 biggest deal killers. This is the wild part. I don't know how many times I've seen where when you're selling your company, you're dealing with only one buyer. I've seen a lot of guys do it. It's tough because when you're dealing with one buyer, what's the deadline for selling your company? There's no deadline. That buyer is setting everything. They're setting they're setting, I'll continue to talk to you, I'll continue to make you feel good, but I'm in no rush to buy the company. So you've got to be dealing with multiple buyers. It's absolutely critical. Now, this happened to me, but you've got to have all the shareholders on board. There's a couple of shareholders I had in one of my companies very early, and that weren't sure if they wanted to sell or not. Make sure every one of your shareholders is on board to sell the company, and have an idea of how much you want to sell that company for and what that structure may look like in the future. There may be guys that just don't want to stay on board. There may be people that do want to stay on board. They've always dreamed of working for a larger public company. Contact at the wrong level, we've gone through. Improper research, dealing with the wrong people, not knowing if a company really is capable of buying you. If your value is $40 million and you found out 6 months later that they only have $5 million in the bank, you're dealing with the wrong buyer. You don't want to find that out 6 months down the road. You want to find that out now. And that's part of dealing with a professional that has done the research on those buyers. Not understanding the buyer's process and models. This is critical. They have a process that they go through to buy companies. You have to understand what that process is, how much time it takes, and make sure you're going through that process. You want to be able to portray the value of your company properly. It takes a lot of rehearsal, takes a lot of fine-tuning on documents. It's important to really convey the value of your company. And it can be done within a sentence. At a minimum, it can be done within a page, a really short page of what the company does and why it's valuable to the buyer. Due diligence, we talked about not qualifying the buyer properly. Again, the guy's, you want $40 million for your company and he has $5 million. Not a good match. Not orchestrating all the buyers properly and at the same time, making sure all those buyers are coming to the table at once. One of the biggest destroyers of deals is ego, greed, and arrogance. People see, well, I just got offered $20 million for the company. I was really hoping for 15, but now I think I can get 50. That's not going to happen. You think it's going to really tick off the buyer or the buyers, and it's going to make the whole process break down. Finally, and I'm just going to wrap up here, and then I'll take questions for 10 minutes or so. But it's really about getting educated. Understand how to sell your company. Part of this session is called Selling Up, Selling Out. We run a seminar that all of you are welcome to attend for complimentary because you've attended this seminar, which is a boot camp, 4 or 5 hours of how to sell your company. Going through all the steps, going through specific details on what you should prepare for and so on. We've been doing this since 1990. We've created over $1.5 trillion in terms of transaction value, and it's really a great seminar to go to. We have them here in Seattle. We have them around the world. We almost run them every week. It's a great educational process. So get educated. Keep in mind that your value, and I'm just going to summarize here where your value is driven by. It's driven by market dynamics. Couldn't be in a better space than video games right now. Market dynamics are the best they've ever been. Financial dynamics, what are your revenue? Maybe your revenues aren't as high as you want them to be, but you may have the market dynamics or the organizational dynamics or the talent to be an excellent acquisition for a bigger buyer. All of these things do come into effect. Leadership, talent, skills, what your customer base is, and so on. If you're on the verge of a hit game and you've been making games for 5 years, and you're in the midst of selling your company and you hit the jackpot with a big hit game, the value just escalates as a result of the growth factor. Here are some of the things that you should consider in terms of negotiation. I think we've gone through most of that. Anyway, let's wrap up. Again, you may be negotiating with your future boss, and so it's really critical to get an intermediary in there, a professional that helps you to negotiate between the buyer and yourself. It's really tough negotiating with your potential future boss, because what are you going to do? You don't want to tick them off, but an intermediary can get in there and negotiate the right price. Again, finally, the seller is serious when they know there's a professional intermediary involved. And he knows that he's not the only bidder if there is an intermediary involved. Now we've got to the final point of what is the average improvement from first offer to LOI? Well, what do you think it is? 20%? 25%? What's the average increase in value of your company by getting a professional involved? It's actually 48%. 48 to 50% more for your company. In my case, I had one buyer come to the table. I said, I've got to get more buyers to the table. I hired a professional, got Corum, and they got the price up by 3 times. 3 times. One of the things that the buyer said to me when he came to me with his initial offer, he said, don't tell anybody else that you're selling the company. Well, I said, I've got to tell other people. He says, well, I'm not going to come back with an offer for you if you go to other people and say you're selling the company. Well, he's the guy that bought the company for 3 times, ultimately. He wanted to buy the company, and it worked. We've been through this. This is critical. Our database is second to none. We have 120,000 buyers actually now that are on the database from all over the world, and that really helps to position yourself. Get in front of the buyers that want to buy you. Finally, after this, after you sell your company, what we do is we all go fishing. And I think we just held one, Tim, last week up in Alaska. Yep, and this guy caught on the right here, got 101 pound fish, halibut, yeah, amazing, it's a blast. Questions? No questions. Go ahead.
What's the cost of working?
The typical cost involves a retainer, a pretty modest retainer, and then look for in a professional for the professional to make most of their money when you make your money. So there's a success fee. It's usually a percentage of that sale. It should be paid in the same way that you are paid for the company. So it would be a range of 4% of that company, of the value of the company. And in the meantime, a small retainer to cover some of the costs of the professional services. And I can get you details on that if you leave your card. Yeah.
And how long is the entire process?
Great question. How long, if anybody didn't hear that, how long is the entire process? We've seen it happen in 3 weeks, and we've seen it happen in 12 months. It depends on the market conditions. It depends on the company and what they're doing and where they're at and their growth, right? But I would say average, it's going to take about 4 to 6 months to sell your company. Get it prepared from time of start of preparation to the time you close the deal and you get your funds. Any other questions? No? I think there was one. Good. All right. Well, I hope you stay around to listen to Alina about all what's going on in the market. She's going to get into specifics on software, M&A, and valuations. And she's also going to dig deeper into the video game space and what people are getting for the companies, what kind of deals are getting done, what kind of sectors are important in terms of M&A. Great. Thanks very much for attending.